once, my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 6th year of the award at the 10th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1937. Today's guest is the host of the Lone Acting Nominees podcast. Please welcome Gordon McNulty. Hello, Gordon.
Hi, glad to be on one of your first episodes. I'm excited to talk about these shorts. This is going to be fun.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's exciting to have you here after I've been on your podcast a couple of times. But tell us, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
I've seen some. The thing with that is that when I was younger, my dad, whenever my sister and I would go over to his house, he would have like his laptop would be loaded up with a bunch of old Disney and Looney Tunes and a bunch of old short films. So there's so many that I've seen that I don't even have logged on my letterbox, just because to go back and like scour through the lists of, I remember watching this one when I was a kid. So I probably have more familiarity with it than I even realize. Mm-hmm. But it's one of them. I probably say I generally prefer it out of all of the short film categories, just because it's generally much more interesting and there's more uniqueness, I guess. And I haven't really dove in. That's not a word. I haven't really gone in depth into the early years as much. So this was an interesting opportunity to get to some of these that I hadn't seen.
Yes, it is. It is really interesting how, especially these early years, like a lot of these films are like classics that everybody seems to watch as kids and stuff. But like people don't really realize that, or like don't really retain like how many of these shorts have like kind of impacted them and stuff. It's really fascinating. Exactly. But let's jump into this year's nominees. We have 3 to discuss this year. The first nominee and the year's winner is The Old Mill, directed by Wilfred Jackson. This is the 9th nomination and 6th consecutive win for Walt Disney, winning every year of the category so far, including last year with The Country Cousin. This is also the 7th nomination and 6th win for the Silly Symphonies franchise. And 2 very important things to note in terms of this short and Disney as a whole. First, this short was the first usage of Disney's multiplane camera, which in short was a vital tool that helped control different layers of the animated frame individually to better give the illusion of depth in the scene, especially when the camera moves in and out of the scene. And while there were other systems created before this, such as the Fleischer's setback system, which we discussed last episode, this system was a lot more advanced and looked a lot more natural and blended in better than older systems. The second thing is that this year is when Disney released its long-awaited feature film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. All of the technological advancements we saw made in these Silly Symphony shorts over the past 6 years has finally culminated in a big, long film. But this is a show about short films, so we will now move back to the subject at hand, The Old Mill. This film depicts the animals that have taken up residence in an abandoned mill, but as a storm comes in, the mill seemingly comes to life and the animals' calm lives are disrupted. Gordon, I have talked long enough. What did you think of The Old Mill?
Yeah, I didn't go into it knowing that technical stuff about the multiplane system, but I noticed like that was something that I took conscious note of while I was watching it. Like even from the opening shot where you see the mill in the background and there's like a spider's web that the camera, I mean, not a camera, but the quote unquote camera moves.
Well, it is a camera.
Through.
It is a physical camera.
Well, yes, but it's not filming an actual mill, is what I mean. But like it's it moves through the space and we're following it, and I thought, like, I wondered if that was a new innovation. So it's interesting to find out that this is like the first use of it. I think that's really cool. I liked this one. I thought this was a technical, a very interesting technically, and also just on a storytelling level. There's not much of a story going on, but it was interesting to follow. I liked all of the animals that we follow, the birds with the eggs and the owl that keeps getting wet, and the bats. I like the bats. I thought
The bats.
they were really well designed when it cut to them, and then when they came back at the end. Yeah, I thought this was a nice one. Because there's no dialogue to it, because like these characters are just animals inhabiting a space. It feels like there's not as much that there could be to talk about, but I liked it.
Mhm. Yeah, I really was kind of surprised how much I really enjoyed this. Like I have seen all these nominees before, and it's just like I remembered just kind of enjoying this short just as a visual experience. But coming back to it now and also like spending time with each one to really think about it, it's just like one, yeah, the animation is just so good. Like I keep saying this on all our previous episodes, and the guests keep agreeing that, like, wow, Disney is really good at animation. Who would thunk it?
Yeah, who knew?
But it's just like it, and like this short specifically, it is really interesting seeing the progression of Disney animation in this time, and this really does kind of feel like a culmination of everything, and like, this really does feel like something made by the studio that would also make Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I see a lot of the similar animation style, and that multiplane camera is really, you really do see like the effects of it. It really makes you feel more in the scene.
Yeah, it's like they're almost showing off this cool new technique that they have. Like, hey, we're gonna use this as much as we can in this short, just to like show you, oh, we know what we're doing when it comes to animation and comes to animating around a space. Like it's a showcase of this new technology to just take one location that has, dimensions to it, and just show off the whole thing as best they can with this new technique. I think that really shows just as much as the regular animation style of it.
Exactly. It's incredibly impressive, and it's just like the animation just brings so much life to everything around it. Like the old mill itself is kind of feels like such a deep character, and it's just like, even
Yeah.
though there's no dialogue, and while there is no like surface kind of plot, you really kind of feel like this whole story going on with all of these different animals in the mill itself. It's really just such beautiful like visual storytelling, environmental storytelling. It's very, there's a lot more than meets the eye with this short. It's very, very good.
Yeah, definitely. As much as it feels like a precursor to like Snow White in the animation style, in terms of sensibilities of what they're doing with telling a story, it feels most tied to me to Fantasia, in terms of
Yes.
like no dialogue. We're just gonna take music, partially inspired by classical music, and just tell a story like that. Like it felt, as much as some of the what's the one, the Swan Lake,
Mhm.
where they do that and that. But it also, like, the exterior shots of the mill itself during the thunderstorm felt almost like a Night on Bald Mountain.
Mhm.
The way that it's depicting the mill in a kind of similar way to Chernobog would be in that sequence. You can tell that they're moving towards a non-linear, character driven storytelling, as much as just sort of vibe storytelling.
Exactly. And thank you for bringing that up, because wanted to mention also that, like, so the Silly Symphony shorts, they originally were meant to be kind of like that Fantasia style, where it is just like animation put to music. Like that, hence the title. They're like, they're
Yeah.
symphonies, but also silly animation on top of them. But with the extreme popularity of the Three Little Pigs in 1934, the Silly Symphony shorts after that kind of focus a lot more on adapting like fairy tales and nursery rhymes and fables and all of that, like Taurus and the Hare and the Country Cousin from last year. But this is really a return of form, because it is just there's no story that they're adapting here. It's just they got the music and they got the visuals on top of it, and it it's really good.
Yeah, it's just, hey, what if there was a mill?
Hey, what if there's a
And there were animals in it, and sometimes it rains.
it's just like Walt Disney. He brings all the 9 old men into a room, and he has this blackboard behind him, and on it he just writes MILL and circles it, puts a big dollar sign over it, and that's all there is.
I love it.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's all you need. That's literally all you need to pitch this this short, and it worked. I think this is a very
worked.
good short. I want to go back and look at some of their other non-fairy tale silly symphonies, like some of the ones that you were mentioning that were actually what
Yeah.
they had initially intended to do. I liked this one, and I want to see more.
Yeah, you should definitely like look into it. It's great history. But I think that's a good place to move on to our second nominee, which is Educated Fish, directed by Dave Fleischer. This is the second nomination for Max Fleischer and Fleischer Studios, working under Paramount, and the first nomination for their Color Classic series, which is Paramount's response to the Silly Symphonies. The film is about a fish who decides to skip school, but then gets tricked by a worm on a hook and fights to save his life. I thought this was awful.
Yeah, no, this is bad. This is a bad one.
Hated this. It was, first of all of the characters in this are so annoying. The voices are awful to listen to.
Yeah, this is really grating, shrill. I wrote down this voice acting is insufferable and shrill. Like I took notes, and that's my first note on this one is the voice acting right away it's off-putting.
Yeah, it's just like, and so the story of it is just like, this fish goes to school. It doesn't want to go to school. Teacher calls all the kids, and the kid like throws his books into a clam and tries to walk away, but teacher brings him back in, and then the teacher just goes like, okay, everyone, today's lesson is avoid the hook, and just sings this sing-song thing that I assume is kind of like a common like way to teach kids about things, because it's just like it isn't this hook, blah, blah. And it's just like, and the kids are all like blah 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 of all the different things with that they, because, and I know I recognize it. I think it's used in like an Animaniacs thing. Is this, but it's just like, and I spent like half of my time just trying to figure out what the hell this song is, because I know I've heard it before, but I assume it's just kind of like a common thing that they use in schools to teach people things. But anyway, it's annoying.
There was this is kind of a deep cut pull, but going back to animation that I used to watch when I was a kid at my dad's house. There's something similar to that there was like a 45-minute TV Cat in the Hat thing from like the 50s or 60s that was animated, where they use like a similar meter to teach how to say, I think it's saying Cat in the Hat in a bunch of different languages. Maybe it's a different part, but it's a whole musical. Like there's several songs throughout it, and it kind of reminded me of that in terms of the meter. But yeah, it's a deep cut. Maybe not.
Well, maybe I'll go looking for that at some point. But anyway, so yeah, after this teacher annoyingly teaches all the kids not to get tricked by the hook or whatever, not to get caught, and it's like a kind of obvious term for like don't play hooky as a common phrase.
Yeah.
So anyway, the kid tricks his way out of school, and then we meet the worm on the hook, who is
as the short intends, it's a sexy worm is the thing, and this is a child.
Yeah. So the fish plays hooky and meets a hooker, and
I didn't even make that joke. Or I didn't even make that connection until just now. Oh, yeah. Man. Oh, that's worse. That is even worse.
Yeah. And then so the fish gets caught, and then he tries to fight for his life. It's just kind of generic. It's just kind of boring. It's just kind of all annoying. And then the fish eventually, of course, it gets on a boat at one point, but then gets back in the water. Then he gets back to school, and he starts yelling at the teacher, and that's it. It's just, why are we here? What's the point of it? Yeah. Like, I know it's just like to teach kids about like don't skip school, you need to learn, but it's just like, I don't care. This is annoying. I have a question for you about this one. So this is ostensibly a comedy, right?
Yes. Did you laugh?
No.
At all? There was one joke that I took note of that I thought was actually kind of funny. And it's he's sitting behind a swordfish in class and he pours some pepper over him and the swordfish sneezes and the sneeze, the sword on his nose cuts through his desk. And I thought, hey, that's kind of a funny thing that they're doing with the environment of these are all fish in a classroom. Let's, play with that. But other than that, none of these jokes land.
Yeah, that was something that is identifiably a joke.
Oh, there's several points that are intended to be jokes, but none of them are funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is how it just kind of goes with this category. It's just like sometimes you get great pieces of animation, sometimes you get educated fish.
Yeah.
It's just like, and there are worse examples of this kind of thing in this category, but this is just bad. They made a mistake. That's what happens. And I'm just wondering, like, what was there really nothing better than this? Was this really
there had to have been. There had to have been more. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think we should move on.
I just have one more note on it. This does something that a lot of early animation, not Disney, not some of those other studios, but some studios do it. That it always irritates me is that the mouths don't move when the characters talk. Like they don't sync up at all. And every time that happens, that's just a weird pet peeve of mine for early animation.
Oh, I did notice that.
There's just like characters will talk and their mouths just don't move. And it's really unsettling. I can't think of any other instances off the top of my head, but I know that like in some of those shorts that I mentioned earlier, even when I was younger, that always annoyed me for what, like it's not something that's like a reasonable thing to get annoyed about, but it always made me irrationally like just animate the mouths a little. And that was just another reason that this movie had lost me from the get-go and did not win me back.
Yeah, I did notice like the very first line that the main kid fish says, like his mouth is just kind of open while the words come out.
Yes.
And it's just like, it's just a sign of like cheap rushed animation, which is unfortunately common at this time. But
yeah.
It happens when you don't care about what you're making.
Yeah, obviously so.
But our third and final nominee is The Little Match Girl, directed by Arthur Davis and Sid Marcus. This is the second and final nomination for Charles Mintz, who oversaw Screen Gems and the Color Rhapsody series, which was Columbia's animation studio and their personal Silly Symphony ripoff. While Screen Gems and Color Rhapsody still have nominations down the line, Charles Mintz did not produce them, and he was replaced by George Winkler in 1939, which was the start of a lot of chaos behind the scenes at Screen Gems in the 1940s, and along with low profits, led to its closure in 1946. The Little Match Girl is an adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's story about a poor little girl who sells matchsticks. It's New Year's Day, it's cold, and no one seems to notice her at all. She retreats to a dark alley and lights a matchstick, and it gives her brief escape into a better life than her own, and keeps lighting the matches to keep her fantasy alive. Gordon, what do you think of our final short?
This one's sad. One's really. I was aware of the Hans Christian Andersen story as a title. I didn't know it was about a child dying. I was not aware of that until I was watching this, and even then, like at a certain point, she escapes into her fantasy and she's up in heaven with all these angels and is celebrating Christmas or something. She gets a toy and all this stuff. And the whole time I was like, this is presented as joyful, but it reads like this is the dying fantasy of a child. And then at the end of the short, it turns out it was the dying fantasy of a child, which kind of took me by surprise. That I was expecting this to, at the very least, that they would have changed the ending of the original story like they did with so many other of these like with Snow White. That's a much darker ending in the original story, but for the movie they updated it to make it happier. So even once I did, pause and look up that, that's what the actual short story is, I was expecting them to have updated it and they didn't, and it was kind of jarring. But it's a good short. It's just very depressing.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. Like this is just a beautifully animated short. it is extremely depressing, even while you're watching all the happy cutesy scenes. If I had one gripe of it, is that it is animated a bit too cutesy. Like the little
Yeah.
girl, like she has such rosy cheeks. It's just like
The cheeks, because she has like Porky Pig face proportions, and her cheeks are so big and like take up the entire lower third of her head.
Mhm.
It looks like in old cartoons where they would do like Humphrey Bogart caricatures, and he has the 5 o'clock shadow. So for like in the wide shots, for a while, I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought this baby had stubble.
Yeah.
It was jarring a little bit, and also the eyes are huge and almost entirely pupil or iris. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's it's just a little bit too over cutesified.
Yeah, but even that, it's still just gorgeously animated, heartbreaking
Yes.
story, and it's just like. And there is another adaptation of The Little Match Girl that is also nominated in this category that was made by Disney in like 2006, I want to say, and sometime in the 2000s. And it's just like both of them are fantastic. And I'm not sure which one I prefer because they're both just excellent adaptations of this story, and both beautifully animated. Um, it's
Yeah,
just
I've not seen that one. It sounds good. I will have to check it out another time, not immediately having
yeah.
right after having watched this one. Just
Yeah.
I need a little buffer in
Yeah.
between. But
It-
yeah, I'll have to check that one out as well.
maybe I'll bring you on for that episode.
Sure, why
We-
not?
who knows? Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. It's just a heartbreaking story with beautiful
It
animation.
is. It's
It-
another one without dialogue, so
Mhm.
again, a little less story to talk about. But yeah, it's she can't sell matches. People in the square laugh at her because she wants the pancakes that look those pancakes were really well
Those
drawn.
pancakes look delicious. Like
Yeah.
we saw them only a brief time, but those are in my matchstick fantasies.
Yes, that's the MVP of this short. But like she goes into the alley and lights the matches and ascends to heaven and then dies. Well,
Mhm.
no, first, even in heaven, even in her fantasies of heaven, it still sucks because there's another windstorm and it blows everything away. She loses her dolls, she loses all of her baby angel friends.
Yeah.
She loses the whole set decoration of the heavenly like throne and bed and everything. So like, man, this kid cannot catch a break.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just like I think in like the original story, it's kind of like it's meant to be like she died like in her fantasy. Should she never real like as she died, she didn't realize that she was dying and something. But like in this short, it's like her harsh reality is forced upon her right in her dying moments, and
Yeah.
so it makes it kind of worse.
It does.
It's kind of sadder than
And then this angel just shows up and
Mhm.
scoops her soul out of her and carries her up to heaven, and then it's just over.
Mhm.
So I guess she gets to go to heaven twice, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good for the little match girl.
Good for her. Well, not good
She
for
gets
her, but
well,
good
no,
for her.
good for her. She gets to die and go to heaven twice in one night. Oh boy.
The Grinch's heart died 3 times that night.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's actually exactly the this design kept reminding me of something. And she does look like Cindy Lou Who in the original animated Grinch thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
her that she has some shards of the big cheeks and stuff.
The same
I-
sort of
I-
cherubic look.
Yeah. I thought she looked like Shirley Temple.
Yeah, that was also a little bit of probable some inspiration there in terms of who we're modeling this kid after. But yeah, the Bogart 5 o'clock shadow. Really threw me.
All right. I think we've gone through our thoughts on these, and
Yeah.
now that we've gone through and talked about the 3 nominees, let's rank them. And I think this is going to be interesting because this is the first time when we have 2 great shorts in the lineup, and it's like I don't know what your number one's going to be.
Oh wow.
I barely knew what my number 1 was going to be. It's close, but I think we can agree that number 3 is Educated Fish.
By a long shot.
Landslide. Just
So you've been doing this now. This is your 6th episode. Is this the worst one you've covered?
I think so. It's close, but I'm pretty sure this is the worst one so far.
I'm
Uh,
honored. I am
I-
honored to be here for this momentous occasion.
yeah, I just pulled up my list very quickly. Yeah, it is the worst one.
It's bad. It's real bad.
At least in my opinion. Like,
Oh, my opinion as well. I am right there with you.
yeah. So, but what is your number two, Gordon? What's your second place? You're a runner up.
I am gonna say my second place would be Little Match Girl.
Oh.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was very emotional and very well animated. But it's just a little bit behind the Old Mill, just because I think that achieves a little bit more in terms of the emotions and in terms of keeping my interest throughout. And
Uh,
yeah,
my number two is the Old Mill. I just think like while the Little Match Girl like is like so I love the Old Mill. The Old Mill is so beautifully animated, but I think I didn't have as much as of an emotional connection to it as I did with the Little Match Girl. It's just like I just kind of I very much appreciated it on a animation level and on just a storytelling level, but it didn't really hit me as hard emotionally, obviously, as the Little Match Girl because that is such an emotional story.
it is. Yeah.
And so of course your number one is the Old Mill, my number one
Yes.
is the Little Match Girl. And
Yeah. I could see myself just as easily. Maybe it's just that I watched the Old Mill first. It could just be that. Maybe if I watched them in a different order, I would have a different ranking. Who's to say? But yeah, no, they're both very good.
Mhm.
It was tough picking out which one was going to be my number one because, like you said, they're both very good.
Yeah. And it's just like of all of the shorts I've watched for this so far, it's just like they are my second and third of the whole series so far. So it's just like they are very close. It's like I love them both very much. But apparently not as much as Three Little Pigs, which is a great short.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
uh but yeah. Before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Gordon, or anything you'd like to promote?
I don't have any final thoughts on this lineup. You can find my podcast though on Twitter and Letterboxd at Lone Acting Noms. I cover all of the movies that only received one Oscar nomination, and that nomination is in an acting category. Uh, you've been on the show a couple times talking about Marathon Man and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I'm coming up on my 50th episode pretty soon, so I'm excited to get to that. Yeah, you can find it wherever you can download your podcasts as well.
All right. Yeah, check out that Best Little Whorehouse in Texas episode. We both have a lot of fun on that one.
Yeah. And check out the Marathon Man episode. Even if we didn't like the movie, it's still a fun episode.
Yeah. And I just remembered this. But this is the first time that not only did neither of us pick the winner, or well, you picked the winner, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But and also the first time me and the guest disagreed on our number one picks, which is interesting.
Ooh. Nice. That's
So,
fun.
well, thank you, Gordon, for coming on to the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the Short Podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.